The major news of the day is the ongoing feud between Elon Musk and President Donald Trump. In this video, we discuss some of the things underlying this feud that aren't at the surface. We also talk about the powers at play and how some of the problems presented in this feud can be combated by Pope Leo XIV, in the same way that Pope Leo XIII addressed the controversies of his day. This is something that I wish more people were talking about, and this is something, I mean, I have to say, Catholic Family News, we've been talking about this almost for a year now. I think almost exactly for a year. We've talked about this development, that this is going to be a problem, and this definitely does have, especially a connection with Catholicism as well. So, what are we talking about? Well, there was this recent New York Times article, a series of articles actually, talking about a number of men from the company Palantir have seemed to have amassed a lot of influence in the United States government. Now, backing up for a second, we need to understand how all of this happened, what the influence we're talking about is, and who these men are. In order to do that, and I'd love to hear your insight too in a minute, Brian, about the economic side of this, which for our audience, if you go over to catholicfamilynews.locals.com and you listen to Brian's lecture on the Father Fahey conference, he talks about this economic development, about how we're in this mess that we're in now, why the current state of economics is so dire at the moment, and why everything seems so nonsensical. But the reality is that uh, our spending has gone through the roof. Much of that is due to entitlements, which is Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and military spending has been increasing. That's the largest amount of spending in the United States government. Now, with this, and with the COVID-19 uh, event that occurred, we saw inflation went up drastically. And in order to combat this, again, we're getting kind of technical, but it's important. In order to combat that, the interest rates had to be raised in order to, and this is just economic theory trying to slow down the economy, basically. Um, Now, what this means is that it's more expensive to borrow money. And so the problem gets worse and worse and worse. And so all of that's being said, that is why what Elon Musk was worried about. Elon Musk proposed that he goes in there and starts what's called the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. He was going to get in there, and the strategy, and we've talked about this on previous weekly news roundups as well. It was kind of odd because he says we're not going to go for the entitlements, we're not going to go for the military spending, we're going to go for the excess waste that has been spent in things like the State Department and all of these government agencies, the Treasury Department, the IRS, all of these to try to eliminate waste. And he posited we could save trillions by doing this. This could solve the crisis of economics in the is what he proposed. Now, this ran into immediate problems, but before he ran into those problems, who did he bring in to do this? This was a big scandal. This was widely talked about. Well, he brought in people mainly connected with Silicon Valley because those who don't know, Elon Musk was a part of the PayPal startup that had many of the people associated with that were a part of what we call the PayPal Mafia, which just means this group of Silicon Valley technocrats, basically. Especially connected with that is this Peter Thiel, who started this company called Palantir, which I'll get to in a second. Um, and these people were brought into the government. They were given unprecedented security clearances, weren't brought in through Congress, unprecedented. And they got access to the Treasury databases, the IRS's database, the HHS database, all of this data. And Elon Musk and all these people were given a small window in the government to work because one of the benefits of the United States Constitution is the fact that we have the Constitution tries to prevent the government from investigating its people, seizing our privacy, right? And so there, in order to do this, you have a restriction on people not confirmed by the Congress going in there and doing a whole bunch of things like this. Now, with that being said, Elon Musk has now left uh, and has basically said Doge has failed. And he said what we need to go back to is growing the tax base through increasing AI, through increasing the GDP. And he's even turned on Donald Trump opposing his big, beautiful bill, they call it. Now, with all of that, you still have these Palantir people, you have the technocrats that got this massive amount of access to all of these databases. All of these, the Silicon Valley folks got access to these databases. Um, and this should cause us to be concerned. Who's at the head of all of this? Well, it's a man named Teal. He started Palantir, this company Palantir, after 9/11, really as a front for the CIA, as a database collecting operation. Which what they do is they take raw data, they analyze it, they refine it, and they are able to provide analysis for massive amounts of data using artificial intelligence. And so he's worked almost exclusively for the CIA for a long time, but this expanded to things that should be concerning for Catholics, especially in light of the FBI's investigation into traditional Catholics, which people should take seriously. For example, Palantir was investigating who was unvaccinated, who was vaccinated, trying to assess that, trying to use wastewater in order to see where, analyzing where outbreaks could occur. Most recently, it's been using facial recognition software in conjunction with this data analysis for the state of Israel to determine who was a threat in Gaza and who was not, in order to eliminate those people who would be considered maximum threat. And so now you have all of these Palantir connections have unprecedented access to all of this data, from the treasury to your health to your tax records, that they can now cross reference. And so now you have this massive um, Palantir company with contracts with these different departments, with these different agencies, that can now cross-reference their data to an unprecedented degree, to have, and the state, which is militarized, it can be violent, now has access to all of your health information, all of your tax information, in practically everything about you. Now, this should be a problem. Now, if you hear that, I think somebody can easily become very worried. This almost seems apocalyptic. Now, I should back up for a second. We shouldn't be worried about that, because what I would say is a great sign of hope is that it does seem that Pope Leo has an idea of what's going on. This is something that the Catholic Church has to be involved in, because you cannot get an accurate assessment of economics, the relationship with technology, the relationship between the class structure and the surveillance state, just from reading the Bible. That's all the Protestants have. Nor can you get that information from just going to this first 7 ecumenical councils. That's all the Orthodox have. The Catholic Church, on the other hand, just as Pope Leo XIV's predecessor did, the Pope Leo XIII, can use the magisterium to assess social problems using the light of scripture and tradition through the magisterium. And just as Pope Leo XIII did that with the class struggle and the relationship with distribution of property, it is now Pope Leo XIV's job to come in and really assess what are our human, how does human dignity relate to being surveilled by these massive companies, by the state wielding this surveillance state? How is our human dignity being violated? That's really the only way out of this, I see, because frankly, I think JD Vance and the Trump administration, JD Vance, who is largely controlled by Peter Thiel, was largely had his political career jump started. They have failed to correct this. They have failed to do anything about it, and it doesn't seem they'll be able to do anything about it. So really, we have to look to the Catholic Church in order to correct this monstrous attack on human dignity through the surveillance state, knowing everything about us, and ultimately serving ends that are anti-Christian.
I mean, it's well beyond actually what Orwell imagined. I mean, Orwell imagined what we pretty much have now, these two-way screens in everybody's house where the government kind of physically watched you. And that obviously goes on. But this is even, I think, deeper than Orwell, because data, more than just watching you, this data about you that can be collected and analyzed and then decisions made based on AI assessments is incredibly dangerous. And it's ironic. The Enlightenment, they moaned and complained about essentially the Middle Ages, the age of faith under the monarchies. It was so repressive. Well, your average citizen in the year 1300 enjoyed a greater extent of personal privacy for their life and their family by far compared to anyone living in the United States today. I mean, there's, the king of England probably knew nothing about almost every subject, or his government, even not just the king, his government, hardly anything, even their names, where our government and these oligarchs behind it know more than we know about ourselves in many cases. So it is, I think, a real, and it is one of the things I'm happy Leo the 14th does seem to be aware of. And Archbishop Vigano has been talking about it for years and some of his concerns about the deep state. So again, this is the kind of thing where the church's moral authority is greatly needed to stand up and warn us.